All right. So welcome everyone to our summit series, Human Trafficking and Homelessness, where we are breaking down the dozens of causes of homelessness and the multidisciplinary responses and what you can do. And so today our focus is natural disasters, which not just in recent weeks, but in basically the last year has been in the headlines consistently. And so we're going to break down what the responses are and what you can do. Today, I'm Mandy. I'm the co-founder of CAN Church and Community Abolition Network, where we equip you to be that local response, to help build a response from prevention to survivor reentry and everywhere in between. And I am joined today with two incredible people. We've got Sean McKillop from New Life Community Church. He's a realtor by trade. He's a CAN abolition advocate, a church-based leader in anti-trafficking. And then we have Bethany Sitzman. Thank you for joining us, Bethany. She serves Christ in Action, one of the emergency response teams. You're going to learn about what they do and how you can be a part of even their response when it comes to your area. So I just want to welcome everyone. If you are watching this on the live Zoom or on the Facebook page or later on a YouTube recording, feel free to put your questions and we will do the best we can to answer them. Put them in the chat or in the comments, whatever mode you're watching this in. We just want to welcome you and we want you to be part of the conversation. And let us know where you're watching this from. So with that, we have I just want to kind of share how we kind of all met and how this all came together. So let's start with Sean. Sean, how did we meet?
Sure. Kind of my story is not really my story. It actually belongs to somebody else. About 15 years ago, I was a store manager of a store, and a former employee had called me up, and she said that she was in trouble, and she asked me to pick her up. At that time, I was living in New Jersey, so I drove north and was able to grab her from where she was, and then bring her to a safe place. During the drive to where that safe place was, she had told me this story about how she was being trafficked in Philadelphia. Now, this is before the times of like the word trafficking was being used. So she told me her story, and it wasn't that I didn't believe her, but it was just so horrific where I was just like, that doesn't happen. Um, so then some years later after that, there was another incident with another employee of mine at a different store. And I was able to get her to a safe place as well. So probably about 2017, 2018, Pastor Glenn from Barnegat Bay Assembly of God was counseling me. And during our counseling, he had asked, "What do you want your ministry to be?" And I was like, "Oh, ministry, I have no idea." So he's like, "Well, think about it." And this issue of human trafficking was being laid on my heart, and I don't know why, but it was. So the next time we had met, I said, this human trafficking thing sounds like a real problem. And he goes, "You know what? I know somebody who has an organization. Her name is Mandy." And he gave me your information. And since really 2018, I've been a CAN advocate. We did the 2019 hotel outreach together, or the New Jersey-based 2019 hotel outreach, where we reached every single hotel, motel in New Jersey, gave a missing child posters, and I believe that we actually had some success with finding some of those children from that event. Um, and then as far as Christ in Action goes, 2012, Hurricane Sandy devastated the East Coast and devastated my hometown. During that time, my dad, Pastor Dan McKillop, was building a church in Little Lake Harbor, and Christ in Action was there and helped with that build a little bit while they were there, including helping the residents of my hometown. So 10 years later, 2022, Hurricane Ian had hit Florida, and it was laid upon my heart about, I want to go down to Florida. I don't know which outfit to go with. So I told my dad, and he goes, "Christ in Action, that's the only outfit you should be going down there with." So,
No pressure.
served, yeah, right. Served with them for a little less than a week, but I was just so impressed with their operation, their organization, and then, of course, being faith-based. And that was just so awesome to see just how well of an organization they were. So, continue to volunteer with them now, here and there. And yeah, that's the story about how I got hooked up with Can and Christ in Action.
Now, Bethany, how did you get involved, not just with us, but how did you get involved with what you do today?
So that's a long and a short story. So I've been full time with Christ in Action for 24 years, but really I've been brought up in it. My father is the founder of Christ in Action, and so this has been my whole life. And so it's been a great experience for me to see this opportunity for ministry from a very young age. It's been very formative for me, obviously very impactful for me as this has been, now my life's work and what God has called me to do. And so I've always been involved with Christ in Action, and this has been my only full-time work. It's all of my life I've been dedicated to working with Christ in Action, and we started as an evangelistic organization and in the late 90s shifted to disaster relief, and which our heart is still evangelism, is still reaching the lost, but now we do it through disaster relief.
Wow. So how old were you? Were you like a teenager when your parents started this? Like, were you literally raised on the disaster field?
So my parents started it in 1982 before I was actually born. And so Christ in Action is older than I am, just barely, but um, we won't go into details. Anyway, but yes, so I did serve as a teenager on disaster sites. And actually, my first full-time deployment, once I came on staff with Christ in Action, was to 9/11. But I had graduated high school early, and so I was 17 at 9/11 and was able to serve both at the Pentagon and at Ground Zero after that. And so that was quite an introduction to the world of disaster relief and serving. But through my teen years and early adulthood, serving and being in some of those situations where there's lots of contaminants in the air, and in the situations you're working in, we discovered the hard way that it is much harder on younger people, on children and adolescents, because your lungs are not fully developed at that point.
Mm.
And so I have lifelong respiratory issues because of that. And so at this point, we don't allow anyone under the age of 18 to volunteer with us because of potential health hazards. So just wanted to clarify that. So
Yeah,
I did
I
serve as a
wrote that
teenager,
question
but we
down.
don't allow that anymore.
Okay. Well, and I think as we evolve in the ministries and our approach to things, I think we learn from our mistakes
Yep.
and best practices.
Lessons
So
learned.
it's one of those things. Yeah.
Yep.
So, Sean, you mentioned the other suits or the other organizations, which you guys, Christ in Action, you guys are part of a deployment team that has been on the federal response team for quite a while.
Mhm.
What are some of those other organizations that you have, because you coordinate with them, because it's not, not one organization can do all the
Right.
things. So each one
Right.
kind
And
of
so that's something
specializes.
that we love networking with the other organizations. We work with Convoy of Hope, and we work with Samaritan's Purse, and we work with All Hands and Hearts. We work with Inspiritus. We work across denominations, and even with folks who are not faith-based, people like Team Rubicon, because if anything, this last year, especially Hurricane Helene, has shown us there is more than enough work to go around.
Right.
There is more than enough need out there. And so, what we're able to do is to talk to these other organizations and say, hey, where are you responding? What are you doing? And saying, oh, okay, you're going to be, God's Pit Crew maybe was responding predominantly in Georgia. Okay, well then we're going to Florida, and Samaritan's Purse is in North Carolina, and now Samaritan's Purse is large enough that they had, multiple spots, but they were here in Florida. I'm in Florida right now. We're still deployed for Hurricane Helene down here, and so they were down here in Pinellas County, and so we met with them when we came down to assess, and they said there is such a density of need here that we're here in Pinellas County, but the county just to the north of us, Pasco County, also has tens of thousands of homes that have been impacted, but we're not going to be able to touch it because we're so busy right here where we are. And so I said, well, if there's that great of a need and we know that they're not going to be able to touch it, then that's where we want to go. And so they were actually able to connect us with a church that had requested them to come. And that's where we set up our base camp to serve here in Pasco County.
Wow. I just think it's interesting when you said 9/11, for so many of us, that's like a marker, right?
Yes.
9/11, COVID is another one of those markers,
Yep.
like everybody refers back to as a point in time.
Yeah.
We planted our second church in the state of New Jersey. We're based in New Jersey.
Okay.
I didn't mention, so Christ in Action is based in Virginia, and then the church that Sean serves is based in New Jersey as well, but he also serves in Maine. So he's kind of, and then he went down and helped out in Florida. So he's our East Coast man. He's one of our team leaders. But 9/11 was a big part of even we started doing outreach because we basically lived in a suburb of New York City.
Right.
And so many dads and moms didn't come home. So we were ministering in the schools, and from my house, you could watch my old house. We literally for months watched it all burn. And I served with the Red Cross at that time, and we had, because of my medical background, and we were just waiting to be deployed. And of course, that nothing opened up. I share a story about how David Wilkerson, who was the first pastor that Mayor Giuliani called the months before, God put on his heart to prepare something prophetically was going to happen, and there was a sense of mourning. He dropped all the services of the church and just made it all a solemn assembly prayer meeting. And it was unlike anything I'd ever heard or been a part of. And again, 9/11 hadn't happened yet. Right. And so that was my home church while I was planting our second church and even our first church in New Jersey. And what was interesting with that, the night, so we were at these daily prayer meetings, and you could hear a pin drop. It was like there was a sense of ominous, like something was about to happen and we needed to be ready. And it was like a sense of mourning as well. And then the night before it happened, Pastor Wilkerson, God put it on his heart to call all the congregation to make sandwiches. Whatever you have, whatever you can get hold of, make sandwiches. And the very next day was 9/11, and you had people stranded in the city. If you're not familiar with New York City, there are a lot of people that go to work every day in New York City that don't live there. So you're talking about millions of people stranded, not able to leave until like 10 o'clock or even later, because all the roads and tunnels and bridges were shut down. But they had food because God had spoken to a pastor. So it just, before the disaster happened, I think sometimes we have a heads up, but even in preparation for the disaster, we're going to kind of talk about what your organization does. But I wanted to kind of share so our family went through a season of homelessness. Really, we were out of our home for a year and a half because of Hurricane Irene. And leading up to Hurricane Irene, which I know you guys responded in New Jersey multiple times. I lived in Wayne, New Jersey at the time, and we had back-to-back. In 1 year, we had 2 natural disasters that affected our neighbors in the flood area, which we were not in the flood area. And so I got kind of used to helping our neighbors, and then our church hosted Samaritan's Purse, because they were responding in the north. I think you guys during Hurricane Sandy, you guys were responding down more in the beach area by where Sean is. But it was back to back every time I had riverfront property. You would turn our regular neighborhood into riverfront property, and we're helping our neighbors. So leading into Hurricane Irene, our neighbors were preparing. We helped get their things out of their house in storage that was high. They were already in the hotels. Like the people who were used to this, and usually you'd be back in your home in like 2 to 3 months. And FEMA at that time was working very functionally. That was in 2011. And then it was a few days after, and it was the height of the flood, and something happened that had never happened before. I woke up, looked through our back window, and we had an in-ground pool, and that had cement around, and we'd never seen the floodwater actually breach our yard. And I literally looked and I saw just this little drizzle go over the sidewalk, and then this brown water just started to fill not fill, but just like drizzle a little bit into this pristine blue pool. And I just thought, uh-oh, this is different. And so I had littles, 45 minutes. I said, okay, guys, we need to, my husband and I, we went downstairs, put everything that was low, high, as much as we could. And we packed our 3 children up. And by the time, it was 45 minutes. And by the time we reached, but by the time we were ready to go, it sounded like a waterfall in our basement, and our house was surrounded. Our SUV was parked in the front, and we had to climb in it from the back so we wouldn't have to walk through the contaminated water, and we got out of there. It was August, summertime, summer clothes, little kids. But the thing is, we were late to the party, because in the tri-state area, if you weren't flooded, your home was already filled with family and friends. And then the hotels were all filled up, because if you're not familiar with how disasters happen and what happens as a result, you've got people that they fill the hotels and the resources and the emergency shelters. And then like the FEMA workers, the insurance adjusters, everybody kind of descends when it's a natural disaster. And it just fills up every hotel and motel in the area. So that was our experience. There was literally no room in the inn. And so night by night, we had to find a new place to stay. We kind of were living in our van in that, because we had to, check out, when God would provide a hotel. But every night we experienced the provision of God. Sometimes at 10 o'clock, one hotel for one night. And so we would land in that location. And so it was quite a journey. And it was 2 things. We talk about the dozens of individual causes of homelessness, and most Americans are one job loss, one natural disaster, one family death, one injury or illness away from homelessness. Most Americans are. So this is important for us to prepare ourselves, but also be ready in response. So in our case, it was a natural disaster and someone who fraudulently cashed our insurance check. So in our situation, we had helped Samaritan's Purse 2 weeks or two years before, back-to-back incidences, and then we were the ones in need of help. And there's adrenaline, you're just trying to figure out how to survive initially, but then things happen and the prolonged trauma of it. We're going to talk about that kind of toward the end, but how, when you're in a situation and you face injustice upon injustice and how do we respond to that? And sometimes people are going through things that are unusual, but we want to make sure people understand, wow, not many of us can avoid these kinds of causes, but if we can help build a response, let's do that together. And so I want to just, Sean, I know you've got the Christ in Action video queued up, and we're going to kind of see what they do in action.
In the blink of an eye, everything can change. Nature has a power that commands.
So, Bethany, can you take us through the process of, well, first of all, I want to just read a list real quick. I try to do this for every one of our installments because people think homelessness looks like one particular thing. And I like to go through some of the causes really quickly. So traveler syndrome is a cause of homelessness. It's a compulsion to keep moving. Injury, illness, fire, hurricane, tornado, floods, mudslides, eminent domain, unemployment, underemployment, disability, inadequate or no retirement, inadequate life insurance, death of a caregiver, a parent or spouse, substance addiction, gambling, injury, mental illness, PTSD, government experimentation. We covered that in the veterans installment. Closing of government shelters, closing of government mental health institutions, predatory lending, housing bubble, gentrification, inflation, pandemic, pregnancy, unexpected pregnancy, no family, orphan, foster care, layoffs, incarceration, lack of essential skills, disability, lawsuit, medical debt, medical costs, prejudice, drug addiction, alcoholism, arson, aging out of the foster care system, defunded mental health institutions, trauma, unhealed trauma, SA, pedo, we have to be careful about what we say, war, debt bondage, labor trafficking, sex trafficking, forced marriage, phobias, persecution, unsafe shelters, no place for pets, which is a really big one, cults, imprisonment, domestic violence, no health insurance, or the mandated fees, which I believe have been removed, were sometimes the straw that broke the camel's back for some people. No disaster, fire, flood insurance, which is a big one for the fires recently. Infectious disease, federal state block of relief reaching victims. That's a big one that we're seeing red tape about. Eviction, rent increase, mold or lack of shelter maintenance, hoarding, mass contamination, multi-generationally taught. And then another one I wanted to point out today that just happened to a neighbor of mine, which is mortgage fraud, where literally your home is sold out from under you without you knowing. So these are just some of the causes that we are attempting in our different summit events. The next one we're going to feature the 22nd of February is addiction and incarceration. And again, so many of these things are just kind of woven together. And so government response is another one we're going to talk about, and which we'll touch on some of those topics today. But what a major natural disaster rolls out, whether it's fire or flood or tornado. And then when do you get that call? How do you respond? Take us through that process of how you mobilize those volunteers and kind of how you get the ball rolling in your area.
Sure. So typically what's going to happen is obviously we're watching the weather, right? All the time. We've got a pulse on it. And whenever there's a major disaster, we're looking for a federal declaration. And the reason why is because we're mobilizing a lot of equipment, and it's going to cost us tens of thousands of dollars just to get from where we are to where the event has happened. And so if we're mobilizing that much equipment, we want to make sure we're really needed. And so typically if there's a federal declaration, then we're probably needed. And if there isn't, then it's not to the threshold that's going to require outside aid. Local organizations are going to be able to handle it, or organizations like the Red Cross or Samaritan's Purse that have more chapters across the US, because we're not as big as some of those other organizations. And so that's why we're looking for a federal declaration. And so when something happens, the first thing we're always going to do is assess. We will send a team to put boots on the ground to meet with the local EOC, which is the Emergency Operations Center, in multiple municipalities, any of them that have been impacted, and say, hey, who is on the ground? What are your responses and what are your needs? Because sometimes we can meet those needs and sometimes we can't. It just depends. A really good example would be Hurricane Helene. We were able to immediately deploy our 6,000-gallon water tanker to Western North Carolina to supply water to help meet that need. And then we were able to send heavy equipment to help clear homes and trees that had, fallen, and, clear just roadways and all kinds of stuff, again, in Western North Carolina. But after 2.5 months, their needs didn't match our capabilities anymore. And so while they were greatly impacted and they will be recovering for a very long time, after that initial recovery or relief phase, they moved into recovery. So now they're rebuilding. And so that's outside of our scope. And so we said, we're not going to extend here. We're not going to continue to serve here because our capabilities don't meet their needs. And so on the other hand, down here in Florida, they had tens of thousands of homes that need gutted. They need all the drywall pulled out and, the furniture and everything. It's going to go down to the studs so they can get mold remediation and then eventually put drywall back in. And you're really familiar with that process, I'm sure. And so down here it is February, 4 months later, and we're still here because our capabilities fit the needs here. And so we want to make sure that before we deploy, we know what the needs are, and we don't always need our water tanker on every deployment. And so we want to make sure we're taking the right equipment that's going to meet the needs on the ground wherever we're going. And so that's the first thing we're going to do is we're going to assess, we're going to meet with the local officials and make sure they want us there. When we went to Western North Carolina, immediately they said, we'll take your water tanker, but we don't want any people here. Please don't bring volunteers right now because we don't have food for them. We don't have toilets or showers or anything else to support volunteers coming in. So please wait until we get something stood up to help support these people. Because yes, we're bringing in a water tanker, but that's one, and that's not meeting all the needs, right? And so they're looking for more infrastructure so that they could support the volunteers. And so they said, give us 2 weeks and then start bringing in volunteers. And we said, okay, great, we can do that. And so we want to make sure we're working with the people on the ground as opposed to just doing what, our gut reaction is, let's go, let's help, right? But making sure we're doing the right thing in the right timeline. And so that was something that, we had to help, our volunteers understand that, hey, we can take you in Florida right now. If you want to go to North Carolina, you're going to have to wait a couple of weeks because they're not ready yet. Even though they do need help right now, they're not ready for you to show up right now. And so, being strategic about that and sending supplies, but not necessarily volunteers immediately. And so anyway, so we're going to assess. And then when we send our assessment team, we're sending out a bulk email, sending out texts and saying, hey, we're assessing in this area. We're looking at a deployment. And so look at your calendar, see if you're available to volunteer and work with us, et cetera. And then once we determine, yes, this is the county we're working in, these are the dates that we're committing to, because that's the other thing is depending on the extent of the damage, we might say, hey, we're going to make a 4-week commitment, or hey, we're going to make a 3-month commitment. And we can always extend that if need be, but we're going to make an initial commitment to say, hey, this is how long we think we're going to be needed, or that we're at least going to schedule volunteers for until we see how quickly this work is going. And so we'll say, hey, we're going here. This is how long we're scheduling volunteers for. Sign up. And so then we have people who will sign up. We start, getting a roster ready. And then our teams from Virginia will roll with all of our equipment, whatever equipment we determine is needed for that location. And then we will set up camp and we will be there a couple days, normally 2 days before the volunteers start to arrive so that we can set up, so that we have a mobile kitchen and we have showers and we are able to host them once they get on site. And so that's the goal, is to make sure that everything is operational before we have any volunteers show up. And then we also have, so we have that initial assessment, but then we also have assessors who go out into the neighborhoods and meet with the homeowners, with the residents who have actually been impacted, because we are not going to just drive down the street and start pulling trees out of yards and stuff like that. We want to make sure that we have the homeowner's permission first and foremost. And so we're going to say, hey, it looks like you would like us to move this tree. Can we have permission to come onto your property? And would you like us to take this tree? And especially if you're going in and gutting their home, removing their, appliances and furniture and stuff like that, you have to get their permission first. And so we're going to do that. We're going to meet with them. And then we're going to pray with them. We're going to say, hey, this looks like what you need with your house. And how can I pray for you? You're going through a lot. How can I pray for you? And then we stand right there with them wherever we are, and we'll pray for them, encourage them. And we often find that whatever they're going through it's not the only thing they're going through. This storm, whether it's a hurricane or a tornado or a fire or flood, whatever, that's not the only thing going on in their life. They may also have a cancer diagnosis. They may have also lost a loved one. They may, you know what I mean? They're walking through all the things we always walk through in life. And then this happened on top of it. And sometimes it is the straw that breaks the camel's back for them. And so we do training for our volunteers, which is not required, but it's strongly encouraged on how do you talk to someone who's going through crisis? What do you say and what do you not say? How do you share the gospel without preaching at somebody, and
Can you
without
just
sounding trite?
Can you just share some of, because there are misunderstandings, I think. I think there are things we say when someone is grieving. And this is trauma and this is grief. In the same way
Yes.
you're going
Yes.
through shock. You talk about the 5 stages of death and dying, or it's the same kinds of phases. You've got denial. You've got, I think with this sort of thing, you see a lot of shock because you just don't even know where to begin.
Yep.
And in our case, by the way, people think, well, why did, if you've got insurance, it's going to take care of it. Why do you need an organization to come in and help? Let me tell you, if mold remediation, if our house had been left standing for a year and a half before we got those funds to fix our house, it would have been condemned. It wouldn't have been enough to take care of that. So the fact that you're providing that immediate care, and that, because the overwhelming sense is just like, I don't even know where to begin. You're looking at it. In fact, we've got some videos. We're going to share a couple that just kind of show you a bird's eye view of it, about how you're walking people through. So when you take your volunteers through, and you're training them like way in advance too, right? So you're building up teams ongoing because you never know when the next thing is going to happen. I want to hear about that, but also, just since you mentioned it, what are some of the phrases and things that people say that are well-intending but can be harmful?
There's one that's, I don't know that I would say it's harmful, but it's not helpful. And that's, how are you doing?
Mm-hmm.
Because they're obviously not doing well. And so we teach people just to shift that a little bit and say, how are you holding up? Because that validates that they're going through something major.
That's good.
And so you're still asking after their welfare, and at the same time recognizing that, hey, I don't expect you to say good, because, right, that's what we say. Hey, how are you? Good, right? And like that's just rote. But if you shift that question and say, hey, how are you holding up? That's saying, hey, I see that you're going through this. Wow, how are you holding up under all this? And it gives them permission, and we'll often say, it's okay to not be okay right now.
Yeah.
You are a normal person with normal reactions to a very abnormal situation, because people do, they feel crazy, right? Like I'm laughing one minute and I'm crying the next minute, and I just that's normal.
Mm-hmm.
That's normal to have that emotional roller coaster, and just helping them realize that, okay, yes, I am laughing one minute and crying the next, but that's a normal reaction. Oh, okay. And just helping them to to stabilize the situation. And something else that we talk about is the way that we will, I'm sorry, my mind just went blank.
While you're thinking of that,
Yeah.
I want to just, there's a video that we have, actually a couple of just kind of highlighting some of the regular trauma that people go through in these circumstances, that I think sometimes can the picture can express it better than we can. But there is a sense of intimacy when your life is laid bare and strangers are coming into your space, and you're traumatized, you don't know what to do, and yet, there's something so intimate about that. And that, I think, volunteers, we want to get in there and help right away, but we have to be respectful, like you said, always asking permission, but that incremental helping people process, you want to get in and, throw things away, and get things going again. But it's like, wait a minute, that's everything they have. Those are their family pictures. There's an organization in Bethel that they're helping with the Dream Center, not do mud outs with the fires, but actually help find like family jewelry and gems and these kind of like, and they're again, because there are so many organizations that do very similar things, but this organization decided to focus on this. And so these heirlooms are being found in the rubble, whereas if we just went in and did demo right away, those things would be lost forever. So it's just very interesting how these things are piecing together, and that sense of intimacy, that sense of history, and that sense of honoring and serving that family or that individual in such a personal way. I just want to, I know, Sean, you've got a couple of they're just little short trauma videos, but they give you a perspective of kind of what people are going through at the moment and even in the aftermath.
Yeah.
Are you evacuating? Are you okay? Oh my gosh, are you okay?
Can I just leave my car right there?
Where's your car?
The cop said you have to leave, and I leave my car right there because
So, what happened?
there's a lot of fire right there. That's why the people coming. We leave the car and
They said to get out of your car? Okay. What did they tell you to get out of your car?
So these are people stranded trying to get out of an evacuation zone, and they can't.
Because the
They have
fire
to
came right
leave
down
their
to
cars.
the road, and the fire department came up and said, get out of your cars now, because the fires were right up against the cars. There's another group of people. Hi. Were you guys told to get out of your cars as well? How far up were you?
At the corner of Palisades Drive and Sunset. We had a home and a reverse.
Okay, and did you see, I can walk with you, did you see the flames coming?
Oh, yeah. The palm tree was on fire on the corner. Oh, so it's really bad.
All right, where are you headed now?
I think towards the water, probably.
Okay, all right. And how close were the flames to your home? What happened?
You can,
It's right near the flame. I mean, it's right there, right now. It's on the side of the hill. We don't know what's going on. We can see the home from the sunset side.
so if you notice at the bottom, it says emergency shelter.
Stay put, I think so. All right, so it's kind of chaotic here, to say the least. We've got people jumping into cars. Are you?
So that was done by the news media, and we were trying to share the information that the LA Dream Center was safe, a place in the center of it all that was taking in families. Of course, they were doing the regular feeding programs and all, but this is how churches can get involved in a lot of different ways. There was another, I think it's the next video. This one is a clip from a Samaritan's Purse video, but it just kind of shows the shock and the process and the grief that someone is going through. And I think that's important. Again, talking about that intimacy, talking about the volunteers, and how you coach them to really respond to the person holistically.
Mm-hmm.
Sean's an awesome tech person.
Yes, he is.
Here?
Rick says this is not the first time for you guys.
Not, yeah.
Well, I'm so sorry this happened to you. I really am so sorry.
This is too much because we almost did not survive, did not make it.
Try to be strong. Yeah.
I told you I will cry because I haven't processed this yet. Yeah, like I didn't get the chance to process everything. It's heartbreaking. It's like it's like picking up pieces of your life. Pieces of your lives are all over the floor, covered with mud.
They have layers of trauma that they're dealing with.
We need guidance. We need some peace.
When you go through rough times, you don't really need an explanation. You need a person to stand there with you. And that person is Christ. He will give you peace in the middle of that storm. Because what do we take from this world? We don't take our stuff. The car we're driving right now was our son's. He died 2 years ago. He didn't take it with him. We don't take anything except our souls.
We started talking about steps to peace with both of them.
We want to be with God, but we're not, and we know we're not.
It's a relationship with a living God.
Dear God, I know that I am a sinner. I want to turn from my sins, and I ask for your forgiveness. I believe that Jesus Christ is your Son. I believe He died for my sins. We decided to say that prayer because I believe He is our only hope.
I want to trust Jesus as my Savior and follow Him as my Lord from this day forward.
Even though we were put in this very challenging situation, He is still there. He has a purpose.
Without Jesus, you're not going to make it. And I believe He will take care of us.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
So my neighbor, before we were hit, my neighbor the year before, he had, like you were saying, sometimes they have other things going on, and he had a brain tumor. And, we were sharing the gospel with him all the time, but it meant the world to him that these people from our church just came in and descended and helped do mud out, because he was, but also, just the prayers that people prayed and the Bible they gave, and everybody signed the Bible and just said, hey, here's some hope. And, those kinds of things, you just don't know in those moments of despair how weighty those things are. So I know you say you pray with them, you're like, what is a moment that you're like, wow, this was very significant for this person? Can you share a story like that you helped with, Bethany?
So actually, it was really cool. Yesterday, I got to go to a Bible study here. There's an RV park, and we've been working there. It's part of it is mobile homes, and then the other half of it is an RV park. And so almost every one of the homes there was flooded. There's 400 homes, I think, there. And so we worked on dozens and dozens of homes in this trailer park, and they're all retired. They're older. Several of them have disabilities, and they just can't do it for themselves. And so we've been working in this community, and they've always had this Bible study there. But since we started working in the community, the Bible study has tripled in size just in the last couple months. And so I was like, man, I would love to go and be there with them on this is our last week here. And so I said, I'd really love to go and share with them. And so I got to go, and one of the ladies gave a testimony of how she was flooded, and she's a widow, and it's just her and her dog in her house. And she said, I came back to my home. Like, she went and stayed with friends after the storm. And she said, I came back to my home for the first time, and I was standing in my yard, and I just felt frozen, and I didn't know what to do. And she's probably mid to late 70s. And she's like, I just couldn't imagine, where do I go from here? And she said, and then you guys showed up, and we were working on her neighbor's home. And she's like, and somebody came over and they talked to me and gave me a hug. And she pointed over to me. She's like, and then you came and you looked at my house and you prayed for me. And she was like, and all of a sudden I felt like I could go forward. And so then we went and we gutted her home. And she's like, and then my neighbors from the park, they brought me food, and I had this community around me that loved me and was caring for me. And she's like, and suddenly I didn't feel alone anymore.
Yeah.
And I was blessed to hear that it made an impact on her, but also blessed to see that we're not just working in a bubble. Like, it wasn't just us coming and gutting her home, but it was also the Christian community around her, her friends from Bible study that came and supported her. And it was the body of Christ coming together that made that difference in her life, because we were willing to not, we were already helping someone, but to notice her standing in her yard and say, hey, do you need some help? To step out and to be the hands and feet of Jesus, And she started crying when she was talking about it. She's like, I didn't think I could possibly get back into my home. And we've seen that so much. People down here can't afford the flood insurance, and they are retired and they're on fixed income, and they've just there's just no way. And so some of them are doing the repair work themselves. There's a couple down here that they were gutting their own home when I first met them. And we were, again, working on their next door neighbor's house. And she came over and asked one of the team members, she was like, could somebody come over and tell me what of my stuff needs to be thrown out and what of my stuff I can keep? Because like we've been, pulling out walls and stuff. She's like, but I think I can keep some of this stuff, but I don't know. And, whatever. And so they found me, and I went over to look at her stuff. And I was like, no, this needs to come out. And no, you got to pull out your tub, and, like just walking her through. And she was like, oh, I really thought I could keep that. And I thought we were almost done. And like you could tell she was just crumpling almost under the weight of it. And I said, well, it really does need to come out. I said, but we can do that for you. And she looked at me. She was like, really? And I was like, yeah, that's what we're doing for your neighbor Bill over here. Like, we can do that to help you. And she's like, well, I would rather you help my mom. And I'm thinking, how old is your mom? And so her mother is 96 years old and lived 3 doors down from her. And so we walked over to her mom's house, and I ended up spending the whole day. This lady, her name is Joyce, and she spent the whole day walking me from neighbor to neighbor to neighbor who needed help, and they just didn't know there was help out there. And Joyce told me, and so we always invite them back to our base camp to come have dinner with our team at the end of the day. And so Joyce and her husband Bob have come, I don't know, probably a dozen times now and had dinner with us. They've become regulars here, and they love Jesus. But she said, I have been witnessing to my neighbors for years and years, and they just don't want to hear it. They're set in their ways. They are just not interested. And she said, but since you guys have been here, it's opened a door. And now, Ildi, let me read the Bible to her. And, like just this opening for the gospel, and people are interested and just so excited to hear. She's like, it's made such a difference. And it's something we would never see. Except for the relationship that I've been able to build with Joyce. And last night she texted me and said, we were really hoping to come to have dinner, but, we've both got colds and we're staying away because we don't want to get anyone sick. And she said, but we have a training in North Carolina in March. And she said, but I just signed up for your training. And she said, I want to be a volunteer the next time you guys deploy. And she said, because I've seen the difference it can make in my community, and I want to be part of that the next time it happens, wherever it happens. And it was just so cool to see the way that, she's showing Jesus right where she is, but then she caught a vision for what she could do, and she's coming to get trained.
Well, and that's the beautiful part of it is like, it's not rocket science, right?
No.
You take them through, and she went from, what I heard was she felt seen, and then she felt included.
Yes.
She was helped, and now she's part of the solution. And that, with what we do, we help equip churches to lead community in building a comprehensive response to local human trafficking, from prevention to survivor reentry and everywhere in between, leveraging what they already have and do. But for so many people, they go from a place of the one being helped to the one helping others. And it's not an us and them, it's just all of us together. And you're a Christian organization, but you don't just go to Christian homes. That's not you're there to help. You're there, and you mobilize a lot of believers and different people that you train in advance. Hey, if someone wanted to be part of your team now or in the future, how do they get in that pipeline?
So if you go to our website, christinaction.com, and there's a get involved, and you can just sign up for our emails. And then the next time we're going somewhere, the next time we're doing something or even doing a training, you'll get an email saying, hey, would you like to come deploy? Would you like to come to a training? And so that's probably the easiest way. You can also, under that get involved, you can sign up for text messages if you would prefer to get text alerts for those opportunities. And or follow us on social media. We normally post up there as well.
It's so interesting. I wanted to, Sean, when you worked with this group, I know in Florida, what is one story that's just stood out to you that you're like, this really impacted me? Because you really do, as when you're helping other people, you are impacted in a positive way. So what was your experience that?
Yeah, I'll tell you about my experience from almost kind of start to finish. Because like I said, I'm just very impressed with Christ in Action's operation. So like Bethany said, there are no hotels available, and Mandy, with your experience too. So Christ in Action will house you at Camp Hope, and depending on when you come, they'll have the showers ready. Like the amazing setup. They have a trailer that has all the showers. They'll house the men and women separately. So if you're coming as a couple, just understand that you will not be housed together. And they'll ask, like, are you bringing an RV and that kind of thing, because they, what or may not be available to hook up to. So they want to know exactly who's coming down. But they're also their ability to feed people. I was fed incredibly well. Very, very talented chefs down there. So flew in, came in a little bit later, right around when everybody was having dinner, and just was welcomed in. Sat down, had dinner, met a bunch of people, woke up super early the next morning. We had chapel, kind of gave us an idea of what we were going to be doing for that day. And then we went out and we just served. And that was my favorite part, which is just serving people. On one of the last days for this particular deployment, Hurricane Ian, I was bouncing around different sites that day. So the first site that I was at was tearing down some structures that were on the property that were just beyond damaged. After that, I just went 2 streets over, and there was a couple that the other team was working on, and they were gutting this couple's home. And this couple was living in the garage because the house was completely full of mud and everything. So that team was going through and removing sheetrock. And I was able to talk to the homeowners. They had their stuff kind of spread out all over the driveway, drying out. And they were in good spirits for what they were going through. And I think it was because an organization like Christ in Action was there to give them hope. So I was chatting with them for a little bit, and the wife came over, and she had this little box, and she had this big smile on her face, and she opened it to the husband. The husband was like, "That's my class ring." He's like, "I haven't seen this ring in like whatever it was, like 20 years or whatever it was. Like it was lost in the house, and yeah, it was found again."
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's a lot of people's faith. A lot of times we we'll put Christ in our heart and we'll tuck him away, and then an experience like that will bring him out. So that was just one of my experiences with that deployment. But question for you, Bethany, how do you kind of choose a Camp Hope? Because let's talk about how it was a very impressive operation. I felt very safe there. We were, for that particular deployment, I think that you traveled not very far off, and it didn't seem a very great area. And yet at the same time, it felt like we were very safe. So how do you kind of choose a Camp Hope? How is it that you're finding where to go?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. We always partner with a local church, because whether we're there for a month or 4 months, we're always going to leave. And we want to be able to connect the people that we minister to with a local body of believers that's going to be there for the long haul. And so while we have been offered, fire halls, or one time we were offered an old hospital to base out of, we always want to join with a local body of believers as our base camp. And so that's always what we look for. And so we're connected with a lot of different networks, including the Assemblies of God. And so we will call, the district headquarters and say, hey, we're looking in this network. And so they will connect us with potential host churches. And so the biggest thing is that we take up, which Sean can tell you, we take up a large footprint. We have a lot of equipment. We're talking normally we've got probably 20 to 30 trucks that we roll in with. And so it's going to take up a large parking lot, and it's going to have to be a part of your parking lot that you're not going to use on Sunday morning, because it's going to be there for long term. And so if they have a field or something like that they're not going to use, that we're also not going to sink in. But it's a unique situation. So there's a lot of churches that would love to host us, but they don't have space in their parking lot, or we also need space to sleep volunteers, right? And so whether that's, Sunday school rooms or a gym or, something like that, we need space inside the church as well. And so it's a matter of meeting with the pastors and talking about, hey, what spaces are you not using on a regular basis that we could potentially utilize? And so it just is amazing the way God connects the dots each time we go somewhere. In the church that we were in down in Fort Myers, they had not just, but they had purchased this property to open a new campus, but had not completed construction yet. They were hung up in permits and stuff. And so they were just kind of in this waiting period, and they had this huge facility, wide open parking lot that they were not using. And just this one wing of it the construction was completed, it was done, but the rest of it was just this big warehouse space. And so we were able to warehouse supplies in the warehouse space and use the completed space for our volunteers and chapel and all of that. And then of course the huge parking lot for all of our equipment. So that worked out really, really well. And so yeah, it's interesting the way that it works. And sometimes churches will say, hey, you know what, we can combine these Sunday school classes and give you this one room, or, this or that, or, whatever. But it's a big ask, when we come in and say, hey, not only do we need this space, but we're going to be here probably for a couple of months. And so it's going to be disruptive, and we do our very best to be good guests, and, we take care of the facility and always leave it better than we found it. And actually just before I was on here, I was going on a walkthrough with the pastor of our host church here in Florida, just to make sure that everything was exactly as he expected to find it. And so, we just want to make sure that we take care of what we're entrusted with. But it is, a large space that we occupy when we're deployed. And but we also bring in our own power supply. We will have the local power company drop a pole so that we are self-sufficient. If there isn't electricity in the area, we have generators. So all of our equipment can run off of generators. And then, like I said, we have our own water, we have our own power, and we can be completely self-contained if need be. But again, we want that partnership with the local church.
So every time we were deployed, we were local. So we never had to stay on the campus. Like we'd eat meals and have prayer time and stuff. So usually we were pretty local to our home, or they even used our home actually, because we were right on the water's edge. They used our water supply and everything to serve our neighbors. Yeah. And so we kind of our home was a station area in that location. But we also we were displaced after Hurricane Irene, when Sandy not just hit the shore, but it backed up the Hackensack River. Yeah. And suddenly there was a hole in Moonachie. There was a whole trailer park that was flooded, which mudding out a trailer park is quite different than mudding out a regular home, right? So we were deployed in that way. But they, in that case, the host church did not have showers, but they had the room to sleep everybody, and then they brought the mobile shower unit. And it's a great experience. It feels like you're almost on a missions trip where you're camping together. It's kind of fun that way. But we never actually stayed on location. What percentage are the people that don't, like, say you have, 100 volunteers or whatever for the location you're in? Are some of them local? What percentage of them typically come from the local community and don't need to sleep on campus?
Yeah, so typically it is a very low percentage. I would say 5 to 10% of the people are local. The large majority of them are from out of town and are sleeping on campus. And we do have some space. We always make sure we have some space for like RVs, and that way, like our staff that's going to be here for the full 4 months, they're going to be, bringing their own RVs so that they have a space to stay that's their own. And then people who want to come in and bring their RVs, they have that option. But we do have a limited number of hookups. And so we want to make sure we know, like Sean said, if you're bringing one, and then we can tell you ahead of time whether you'll have power, water, all of that stuff so that you can be prepared. And so that's the other thing is when we're scheduling volunteers, we need to know who's coming and when and how many. When we get to a church and they say, hey, you can use this room and this room or whatever, then we go through with tape and we tape off, okay, how many people can we fit sleeping in this room so that we have a max number of volunteers that we can sleep on base. And then we don't want to book over that number, right? Because we want to make sure that everybody has somewhere to put their cot at night. And so that's just part of our logistics on the backside of it, is just making sure. And that's why it's important to register before you show up, and we make sure we have a spot for you to sleep.
I know your dad talks about the food too. Like the food is bar none. Again, I've deployed with some other organizations, but we've tabled next to each other at some district councils and stuff. And he's just known for having amazing food.
Yes. And that's we always joke that we will work you really hard, but we feed you really well. Yeah. And so yes, you get 3 hot meals a day, and we cater lunch on site to the work teams, and it is really good food.
As well as the homeowners too, which
so we serve the homeowners as well. Yeah.
I like the fact that you bring everybody together. I know when we do like street outreach in our cities and stuff, there can almost be an us and them type of thing where you can have missions teams come to like an inner city and do street outreach, but it's like, well, no, you come along the fire with us, enjoy time together. So there's an equality, right? A humanity that it's not us and them, it's just us together. I love that you invite them to your meal table as well. We used to, when we pastored, our homeless ministry was not like we had a separate feeding time. No, it was every holiday, we just had a holiday at the church for people who didn't have family. And we just, as Pollock, everybody come, everyone's welcome at the same table. And there was a dignity to that. And it wasn't something separate, right? Mm-hmm. So I like the fact that you include the homeowners and who are walking through this trauma, because there's something about camaraderie and staying together. Do we have a question, Sean? Something's popping up, I see right there.
Nope, just reminding people, if you have any questions or for CAN or for Christ in Action, just drop it in the chat and I'll read it off.
Right. And if you're watching this later on social media or YouTube, you can put a question and we will do our best to get the questions answered. So with that, I know we want to kind of dive into some of the issues that are kind of out of our control, but do impact our ability to respond, or maybe as families impact our ability to cover our needs, our basis, and how, we, with the shifting climate, when we talk about policy and compounded trauma from prolonged homelessness, there's so many moving parts to what especially this past year we've seen. So I wanted to kind of highlight some of those as well. I know, I just want to make sure we're doing okay on time. So I think you have queued up one of the insurance video. This came up recently with the California fires and how policy impacted water availability. I know we heard from, if you watch the news, just these sort of things, like these are policy decisions and they impact the families and they impact our ability oftentimes to respond. So can you just share that video as well?
No, I'm not supposed to be here, but this is my parents' home.
I know the feeling.
And they just they got canceled from their fire insurance. So they're dealing with this. They're 90 years old. And through the state of California, because of this, they're 90 years old. They've lived in this house for 75 years, and they've had the same insurance. and these insurance people decided to cancel their fire. And we're going through this, and it just happened, and they have no fire insurance. So thank you, California insurance companies, supporting residents who pay taxes and love California. I know I'm not.
So we've been hearing. Los Angeles is my home city, and so I've got family and a lot of memories there. And it was just shocking to me what has happened. But we also know, because we have family there and friends, and what has been going on long term. So, like you had mentioned in North Carolina, a couple that's retired and they can't afford the flood insurance or whatever insurance would have been appropriate for that. And so the bigger haul is not just the immediate, but it's like, how are we going to rebuild? And, if there isn't insurance, or so that, of course, that's a bigger issue that does impact policy. And in this case, the area of California that we're talking about, and the Santa Ana winds and all of that, that is always a high risk for fire. California always is. And even how, fire management has been handled, emergency water supply. A lot of the firefighters were saying they didn't have, they were empty. The hydrants were empty. And so they felt, they just did the best they could with what they had. And then the issue of policy, they capped the insurance cost, which meant in an area like that's, if you're at the beach, right, you're going to have high expensive flood insurance, right? Because they have to be able to pay the bill. And so if you cap that, it means that the insurance companies have to drop the policyholders. And it creates this dynamic. Of course, people feel a certain way about the insurance company, but then people feel a certain way about the policymakers. And it's very complicated. And as the body of Christ comes in to respond, of course, individually, locally, we can advocate for policy change. I think what we learn on that, gives a lot of wisdom to, hey, this is an issue we're running into, and we can advise our policymakers with legitimate perspective. But we try to be, we're not partisan. You're not, right? It's not a political issue. It's like, let's meet the need. And we can work on solving those issues later. But definitely, these are bigger questions, bigger problem-solving issues. One of the things that I experienced because of the long time I was out of our home, it's expensive. You're basically paying your mortgage and you're paying another mortgage, right? Because wherever you're staying, whatever the situation is, whether it's long-term or short-term, it's expensive. And if FEMA, even then, they were operating pretty well, but they were limited in how they could offer. Of course, insurance was limited in what they could offer. And so we were kind of in that middle area. And we saw God provide on a daily basis. We literally, we prayed in our van, my husband and our kids prayed Psalm 91, and my 5-year-old decided to memorize it as a result. And we saw God provide a place to stay every night. Sometimes it was like 10 o'clock at night. That's how my kids started school. One of the things you don't realize in that trauma and prolonged trauma is, look, when you go home, right? And your kids they have homework and they have, whatever, and you're making dinner or whatever, it's just that sense of relax, right? You can kick your shoes off and be yourself. You never have that when you're not settled. Especially if you don't know each night so it's almost like a knot in your stomach, and you never can completely settle. You become an expert on identifying, the McDonald's with the play places and Chuck E. Cheese's and, IKEA's, just so you can have Wi-Fi to figure out where you're going next, and your kids can, be out of the rain and stretch their legs. And so there's a whole side to prolonged and what people are going through that I don't think, unless you've been through, you don't really identify or recognize. Even that sense of like, I'm home, I can relax, right? And you don't have that for sometimes prolonged periods of time. I know we've got another video that talks about, and we're not trying to be political. We have a shift in who's the president and how things are responding, and they're even considering right now changing a lot of things with FEMA. And we're not advocating for any particular one, but I think some of these interviews are very telling in some of the troubleshooting, some of the areas of prolonged trauma that aren't being addressed. and then some really urgent needs that are happening right now. So for example, Helene happened back in September. And then of course we just had the fires in California. So that you've got some urgent and prolonged urgent, and we're going to hear that from some of the footage that we have in just a moment.
They don't have heat. I'm tired of people not having the food that they need. I'm tired of...
This is in December.
Something's got to give.
What's happening in the mountains of North Carolina after Hurricane Helene is absolutely heartbreaking. 3 people were found this week dead in tents because of the freezing temperatures. One of them was a 9-month-old baby. People have been relegated to living in tents, partly because government red tape has prevented organizations that want to come in with housing options like tiny homes. Government red tape has prevented that from taking place. I have been there multiple times on the ground. I have seen that it is the churches that are leading the relief effort. This community, we have been a major part of that relief effort, thanks to your generosity. So we are raising money right now for a huge Christmas outreach on December 15th.
So that is a December. So the event happened in September, and here they are all these months later in December calling for help. And then, just hearing the heartbreak of like, this is too much, which is very different than I think a lot of the natural disaster responses we've seen that are very, in a few months, there's turnover, there might be long time rebuilds, but the kind of blocks that are related to policy and responses that are unfortunately landing in our spaces, and that's just heartbreaking. That was December. It's January, and we've had unprecedented down south. We've had like cold and snow, unlike any other winter that I know of. I knew Louisiana is getting more snow than New York, is what I've heard, and they're right in North Carolina. They're down there with the cold and what resources, right? So that was a December, and I know that the response video with the newly inaugurated president, both California and North Carolina became a priority that they wanted to see hands-on, and they made a video. Again, it might feel like a little bit like a campaign video, but there are a couple of snippets of information we want you to hear firsthand.
Happened on September 27th. That's 4 months ago. Well, for us, today is still September 27th. We haven't had help.
We've come to North Carolina with a simple message for all the people of this region who were hit so hard by Hurricane Helene, and that message is very simple. You are not forgotten any longer.
There were people out everywhere looking for their loved ones, and there were dead bodies. My son's like, Mom, you're going to see things you don't want to see.
I promised that I'd come back to Western North Carolina to help the people of the state, and today here I am. We're honored to be joined today very quickly by several families affected by the vicious storm.
You feel guilty even to be alive sometimes.
We just lost everything.
The water covered everything.
We'll be at your side through every step of the rebuilding, and no American is going to be left behind. The highest responsibility and deepest obligation of the American government is to protect its people. I'm pleased to announce that under our leadership, the federal government will be surging housing solutions to the state that go beyond mere temporary hotel stays. Today, I'll also be signing an executive order slashing all red tape and bureaucratic barriers and permits to ensure the rapid reconstruction of the roads here in Western North Carolina.
Thank you, President. This is our president.
Again, this is not meant to be an endorsement of anybody's political views, but I heard several things. Survivor's guilt. I couldn't find that in any other clip, and I think that's really important, especially in prolonged homelessness because of disaster like this. That's a huge issue, and it was especially traumatic when you had so many bodies floating down rivers and things like rotting, unattended to, whole roads still missing. That's a level of trauma that is like what people go through in war, right? That's just a whole other level. And then he talked about some of the red tape, right? Not just getting hotels, additional extensions of hotels availabilities, but permanent resources, because so many people are like that retired couple you mentioned that don't have insurance, right? Because they've retired. And I mean, areas like, can you explain the topography, like how it's very unusual for this area in North Carolina? It's so high up for there even to be a need for flood insurance, because
So yeah, they're literally in the mountains, and so the idea of a mountain flooding seems incomprehensible, right? Because they're on a side of a mountain, and so it would naturally drain. But just the way that Helene came up the side of the mountain, and it wasn't honestly as much flooding as it was mudslides. And so the entire side of the mountain came down on them. And then obviously the rivers did actually flood. And so I'm not saying there wasn't flooding, but that wasn't the only thing that happened. And actually, we had one gentleman here, Joyce's neighbor Bill, who wasn't here when we were working on his home because he was in North Carolina, because he has a home up there too, had a home up there too. And his property, where his home used to be, the river shifted course and literally washed his home entirely off its foundation. There's no remnant of it. And even his property is now a riverbed. And so there is nowhere for him to rebuild his home. There is no property. There is nothing left for him. And so he was like, well, I'll just go stay in my house in Florida, right? And then 10 days later, Milton flooded his house in Florida. And suddenly a man who had two homes has no home. And so, you say we're one incident away from being homeless, most of us. And so he had two homes, and in the course of less than 2 weeks, he found himself very unexpectedly homeless. And so after Milton, he went back to North Carolina to see what he could figure out about his home up there. Because it's an unusual situation, because now there is no rebuilding. There is no evidence that there was even a home there. Obviously, he has, the deed and everything, but what was in there, contents, anything like that, he has nothing left. But yes, the entire topography of the area has been changed. And so in a lot of ways, it's not recognizable, and it'll never be like it was before. And that's something we talk about in our trainings, is these people who have been so greatly impacted, they'll never get back to normal. It's just not going to happen. They have to build a new normal that is trauma informed, right? Like because of what they've gone through, they are different, and they can heal and they can move on, but they're not going to go back to the way that they were. And so that expectation of getting back to normal is not fair to put on them. And it's a false hope for a lot of them to think that, oh, we'll get back to normal in a week, in 2 weeks. And then when it doesn't happen, it just feels like, oh, what's going on, But for them to realize, no, we're just going to have to build a new normal and figure out, what does that even look like at this point?
Right. And I think as a mom taking little kids through that journey, and, not knowing where we were going to sleep every night. And as a mom, I wanted to protect my children. But at the same time, we're walking through it together. So our faith together is like, we're seeing God show up, and we want miracles. We want to see miracles, but we don't want to have to go through the trouble that require a miracle. Right. So, but that, that was one thing that, you think about when the children of Israel left 430 years of slavery, and the miracles that were in the wilderness, and people would just but that was the only way they were going to eat. That was the only way they were going to dodge death. And yes. But the stories of those miracles not only impacted the children generationally, but it impacted the region. People had heard about the miracles of God's provision. And that's what we experienced. And so everybody kind of has those stories of when you walk through the natural disaster trouble, and how God takes your family through, and making memories, even in the middle of pain, And so we just huddled. I tried to make sure, our van was like fun ready. So if it was a nice day, our kids could skate or ride their scooters or something. And we just made it fun as much as we could. And one of the things that was so funny, my daughter, who was 5 at the time, Christmas came around, and what she wanted was one of those waffle makers, those with that turns, because she'd been in enough hotels, and she's like, that's what she wanted for Christmas. So, and then we ended up making Waffle Saturday our thing because of this awful experience. But there will be those moments. I want to just speak to people that are walking through this right now. You think there's no way, like you were saying, Bethany, that you can return to normal. But the new normal, I hate using that term new normal because it's so overused since COVID. And we don't want to, it just like feels like vomit. Like I don't want to say that, but there is joy. You will find joy again. Yeah. You will heal from the trauma. You will heal from the grief. Many people that may be hearing this, you've lost loved ones. And there is healing. It's never going to be the same. But you will have joy again. You will have, and again, addressing the idea of survivor's guilt. That she's like, I almost feel guilty to be alive because everybody around me is, so many people died, so many family members died. But processing that, and it is so important to process that, whether it's immediately with these teams that are praying and offering trauma-informed care, but also counseling services and resources that are available on call, so you can get what you need. I just want to put that out there. If someone is suffering, whether you are in a situation like this or something entirely different, we want to just say, hey, there are resources out there for you. There are 24/7 prayer lines. There are counselors you can talk to, mental health professionals. There are some people, like one of the videos I watched before this, they were talking about, I was about to just take my life because I just didn't know how I could rebuild, and I didn't know. And there are suicide prevention hotline and resources, all kinds of resources, 9888. There's a number, it's so easy to remember, 1-800-700-7000 is a 24/7 prayer line. And sometimes you just need an anonymous person to just pray for you at 3 a.m. in the morning when you're not going to call on someone else. I just want to put that out there, that you don't have to walk through this alone. And I love the fact that even in the situation response is built in, I see you and I'm here to pray, right? We can do the mud out in a minute, but what you're feeling is real, and what you're going through is real. And talking about policy again, there is a conversation that was caught on film. And this is important because sometimes we don't get to see what leaders are talking about behind the scenes that directly impact us. So I thought this was really interesting. They had in the case of California, they had it was a press event, but they had the mayors, the homeowners association, they had all the people in the room. And what at issue was, they were telling them in 18 months, you can go clear your field and start rebuilding. In 18, I was out of my home for 18 months. And I finally, that's insane. The cost of it all, it just makes no sense. And so we hear the dickering going in this conversation. So I just thought this is important when we understand policy and how we should advocate locally, right? Hey, because we might be in an area that's a fire risk or a flood risk or whatever. We want to make sure our systems work when we face this situation. So you want to play that real quick, and then we'll hear from everybody, a last minute comment.
For the next 3 years.
We'll take a look at that, actually.
Mr. President.
The Mayor, please.
Yes. First of all, let me just take the opportunity to officially welcome you to Los Angeles. Really appreciate you coming, and especially you come just a few days after your inauguration. So I want you to know that your presence here is very much appreciated. Let me also say that I know you had an opportunity to see the devastation. You've seen the extreme loss, the grief that people are going through here. And we are 100% committed to getting this neighborhood rebuilt again. You mentioned a couple of things in terms of us expediting. So I signed executive directives right away so that we could cut the red tape. We could get people back building as fast as possible. And we're going to continue doing that.
Mayor, the one thing is they are saying they will not be allowed to start for 18 months.
No, that will not be the case.
Okay, I just hope you're right.
You can hold me to it.
Because 4 groups said that.
No.
That would be they should be able to do it. They should be able to start tonight.
That will not be the case. You know, first we have to take care to make sure that there's not getting rid of the hazardous waste, cleaning things up so that people can start right away. And just like you said, if somebody had their house was destroyed and they're going to rebuild essentially the same, maybe a little bit longer, a little bit higher, they really shouldn't have to go through much of a process. So I want you to know that we are expediting that. We absolutely need your help. We need the federal help.
You've got it. I told you. You will have no permit problem. There will be zero delay. And as far as I'm concerned, you already have the permits.
And the resources.
I am more worried because I met at least 8 groups of homeowners, and I'm much more worried about the fact that they said it's 18 months exactly, and they were devastated. They want to start now. They want to start removing things. They're not allowed to do it now. And you mentioned hazardous waste. Well, the hazardous waste. What's hazardous waste? I mean, you're going to have to define that. We're going to go through a whole series of questions on determining what's hazardous.
Nope.
I just think you have to allow the people to go on their site and start the process tonight.
And we will.
Okay, good.
You can come back and check.
Last night,
Oh, keep playing it.
18 months. So if that's not the answer, Mayor Bass, what is the answer? Because that's what we were all told last night.
Well, and let me just tell you that we are going to do everything we can, slashing regulations, expediting everything so that people can begin the process right away. You know, we have the Disaster Recovery Center on Pico and Westwood. We have building and safety there. People are already contacting the local agencies. We're bringing our city departments together so that people don't get caught in the loop of going from one room to the next. We want them all to be in the same room so that you can get busy rebuilding ASAP. Absolutely. Yes. And we will clear the lots, absolutely, in the city and in the county. We are working together. Both levels of government are working in unity.
That'd be 18 months. Is it not 18 months? Is it like that's the answer that we got, and that's what we're all hanging on?
Yes.
So if you're telling us now faster, is it 6 months? Is it, I mean, all of our lives, rents, all this stuff is weighing on this.
6 months is no good.
And the number one thing that we are going to do immediately, and you will see this happen, is to clear out the debris. And you know, we're concerned right now over the weekend because of the potential rain, but we are going to move as fast as we can, but we want you to be safe, and we want you to be back in your homes immediately.
But the people are willing to clean out their own debris. It doesn't cost a lot.
Yes, and they can.
You should let them do it, because by the time you hire contractors, it's going to be 2 years.
If a family...
The people are willing to get a dumpster and do it themselves and clean it out.
And they can.
There's not that much left. It's all incinerated.
That's right.
And, you know, it's just going to take a long time if you do. You can do some of it, but a lot of these people, I know that guy right there that's talking. I know my people. You'll be on that thing tonight, throwing the stuff away, and your site it'll look perfect within 24 hours, and that's what he wants to do. He doesn't want to wait around for 7 months till the city hires some demolition contract that's going to charge him $25,000 to do his lot.
Yeah.
I think you have emergency powers just like I do, and I'm exercising my emergency powers. You have to exercise them also.
I did exercise them.
Because I looked, I mean, you have a very powerful emergency power, and you can do everything within 24 hours.
Yes. And if individuals want to clear out their property, they can. Well, yes, but you know that you will be able to go back soon.
Mr. President.
We think within a week.
That's a long time, a week. I'll be honest. To me, everyone's standing in front of their house. They want to go to work, and they're not allowed to do it.
And the most important thing is for people
to
be safe.
They're safe. They're safe. You know what? They're not safe. They're not safe now. They're going to be much safer A week is actually a long time, the way I look at it. I watched hundreds of people standing in front of their lots, and they're not allowed to go in. It's all burned. It's gone. It's done. Nothing's going to happen to it. It's not going to burn anymore. There's nothing to burn. There's almost nothing to burn. And they want to go in. The people are all over the place. They're standing, and I say, why aren't you going in? We're trying to get a permit. And the permit's going to take them, everybody said 18 months. You said 18 months. You said 18 months.
That was last night.
And that was last night.
On that.
This
So-
is a metal roof.
Go ahead, and that's plenty. But that just illustrates the behind the scenes conversation that a lot of times we're not privy to between people in authority who are bargaining on basically our future. So finding a way to be present, to change policies that helped create the problem, but also the things that are impacting our ability to respond as nonprofits. I think that's part of the bigger solution. And one of the things I know, Sean, we talked about before we got on, that I added to that list, which is mortgage fraud. As people are not, there's looting going on, but also people trying to steal people's homes because they have retired individuals that might own their home outright, maybe. So then the mortgage fraud is part of the picture of how things are being stolen from them. So they lose everything. Sean, you said you could probably give a perspective on that really quickly, and we'll give everybody an opportunity to share a minute or so.
In Maine, it's happening a lot in real estate where somebody is posing as it happens more with land than it does with actual homes because it's much easier to pretend to be somebody else. So they pretend to be the owner. They'll sign a contract with a real estate agent. It will go through title and it will close, and then they will receive those funds. So the lot owner has now lost the lot, and they lost any kind of income they would have received on it. So I think Maine is getting a little bit better with it because we're getting better aware of it. But there are definitely some examples over the last couple of years of that happening. But I would say that one of my closing things would be that, Bethany, I know that you help families, like your organization helps families. And without getting into the details, essentially a lot of times throughout the year, you guys are almost homeless in a sense, I feel. And I just want to thank you for that because you are, your family is awesome. And taking the time out of your own personal lives and everything and how that impacts your family is just thank you so much for all the lives that you've touched. And I know, and I pray that Lord will continue to bless you and your whole family.
Thank you, Sean. Yeah, we do travel as a family. I have 6 and 7 and 9 and 10-year-old. So we travel together in an RV all over the place, and we travel 8 or 9 months out of the year. But I just wanted to say one thing in regards to policy. One of the things we found effective on a local basis, on a case-by-case basis, is when we go in and we do the assessment and we make those connections with the local FEMA voluntary agency liaison and the EOC. So, that's going to be the county or the city or whatever municipality we're working in. And we tell them who we are and what we are and why we are and how we're helping and how what we do is going to help them, because we track our volunteer hours, we turn it into them. They can get FEMA grants based on the hours that we work. And so we are not only helping the individuals, but we're also reinvesting that into the community. And so here in Florida, we will be turning in over $500,000 worth of volunteer hours that will go back into the community here. And so there's a real value to what we do with the county here. And so when we were wrapping up, we took a break over Christmas, and when we were wrapping up, they said, hey, our debris cleanup is ending, our program, our contract is ending. And we said, well, we'd like to come back after Christmas and keep working, but we need somebody to pick up the debris because that's a huge piece of it. And they said, well, you know what? The contract that FEMA is paying for is running out, but because we know you and we know what you're doing, all of our public messaging to the whole county is going to say we're done. But if you call us at the end of each day and tell us where you've been working, we will send trucks to those addresses to pick up the debris that you guys have done because we built that relationship with them. And so working around those things because they want to serve their constituents. They want to help those people. And so knowing that, hey, we're volunteering our time, we're helping these people who don't have insurance and don't have any other way of getting these things done. And so they're saying, hey, we'll meet you halfway and we'll make sure that we can haul away this debris so that these people can get to the next step. And so just
did you have that same issue with
building those
Tennessee?
relationships can really help to work your way around the red tape. And so that's been, and again, that's not policy overall, but it is a way that we found effective, just grassroots, to say, hey, you know what? How can we make this work? And so it's coming out of the county budget, and not necessarily the FEMA grants because FEMA isn't covering that portion. But again, they're saying, you know what? Let's figure out a way to make this work.
Right. I love that. Building that relationship. One resource I want to just put out there, I know we're running out of time, but there are forbearances. If you have a mortgage or, like there were suspensions of rents and that kind of thing during COVID, you can, if you have a mortgage, you can go to your lender and ask for a forbearance. If you're in a situation where you cannot pay the full amount, sometimes they can give you a prorated amount, or they might say, hey, we'll work out for 6 months, 8 months. You can actually just pay just the interest, thank you. Yes. The interest, so that your payments are much less. And if you can do that proactively before you miss several payments, you're in better standing. So that's as we're talking about disaster relief, but more of long-term helping a person sustain during some of these unforeseen times. And sometimes you just don't know how long you're going to be out of your home. So I just wanted to put that out there. My husband, who works in finance, he's usually our one that comments on that. But I don't know if Sean, you've run into that in real estate, that the idea of forbearance, but there are resources available for that. I just wanted to put that out there in case someone is struggling. Even if you're not in a natural disaster, you might just be in a financially difficult time. And we want to make sure that you are not put in a situation of homelessness as much as possible. And that's what this series is really about, is to help bridge those gaps, build in resources, help get you engaged in being part of the solution. I hope we're going to have in our areas of posting that we're going to put the information of how you can contact this organization and other organizations that we mentioned today. But I just wanted to give everybody a moment to just share something that, if God put it on your heart, or you wanted to, we're 8 minutes past, my bad, but we had such a great conversation, so much information. I hope you can use this ongoing. For those that are watching, share it with a friend who might be going through these kinds of things. Any last?
I just wanted to mention real quick, if you find yourselves needing help, most states have a 211, and you can call and say, hey, I need help with this or that, and they will give you a list of resources available. And this is particularly helpful during a disaster. They will have a list of any resources available to help with disaster relief during that period of time, and it's updated really frequently. And so I just wanted to put that out there, that that's a really good resource for anybody who might find themselves in a disaster situation or just in need of some extra help.
Awesome. Sean, you want to pray us out?
Absolutely.
All right.
Lord, thank you for Bethany and her organization,
Yes.
Christ in Action. We thank you for Mandy and her organization, Church and Abolition Network. Lord, what an amazing pairing this was today. We ask that these two organizations will continue to bring those who don't know you to life, bring those who don't know you to eternal life. And Lord, I pray for those who are in a natural disaster situation, those who are being trafficked, Lord. We set the captives free, and we give hope to those who do not have it right now. We thank you in your name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you guys for joining us today. And just want to remind you, on the 22nd of February, we are having our next installation. You can follow us on our Eventbrite page, and it'll alert you when we have the registration live. But it's same time, 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and we'll be talking about addiction, homelessness, addiction, and incarceration, and how the resources that help sustain people through those times and their families. So thank you all for being part of our Summit series. And thank you, Bethany and
Thank you so
Sean,
much
for
the
joining us.
invitation. God bless you guys.
Thank you.